Let's get started. I'll read the opening prayer, and then David can do his reading. So
Could you tell us
let
as a
me,
starting point?
excuse me.
Could you tell us where we are?
Oh, we are on, now, according to Rabbi Norman, he said that you all had finished through Leviticus 25:46. So we're going to start with you're going to tell me about what you did, last time with the rabbi leading, so we don't have to duplicate a lot of the discussions. But we will be starting with Leviticus 25, verse 47. So, David, let me read this first, and then you'll be up, and then we'll go from there. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot
So,
divrei Torah.
Amen.
Well, David, why don't you do your reading?
Okay, today's reading will be from Tennyson, written in I think it was written in the late 1840s from Ulysses, the ending of Ulysses. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. The long day wanes. The slow moon climbs. The deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order, snipe the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down, and it may be that we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles, whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Thank you, and back to you, Marty.
Thank you. What you just read is very interesting, but it does. I'm not going to go in that direction. Okay. Hi, Rabbi Mary. Rabbi Mary, you're muted. All right, we'll go on. It's okay, but it's good to see your face. Before you came on, I'm taking pain medications and muscle relaxants, and so if I fall asleep or my speech gets slurry, or if I forget a word, I'm going to blame it on the medicine and not me. Okay.
Right.
So feel free to correct me if I make an error. Anyway, we are on Leviticus 25, verse 47. And
Okay, can we
I-
just solve a quick technical issue? I just want to make sure we can hear Rabbi Miri, because it looked like she was talking before. She's not muted, she's shaking her head. You can't speak to us?
Oh, no.
okay, if somebody has
just
her
got a
phone
problem.
number handy, does anyone have her phone number? She needs to sign off and sign in again, but click that she wants to use her own microphone.
Are you able to hear Rabbi Miri? You heard what was just said?
Yes.
Okay, you may have to do that.
Happened before.
Okay, well, so what did you all discuss since I haven't been here 2 weeks now? I know one was a scheduled, there was a Saturday service, but when I wasn't available, what did you guys discuss?
Oh, there was so much stuff, Marty. I'm not sure we want to go back through all that. Gosh.
Well,
We're talking about the Jubilee.
Yeah.
We went into the Jubilee year in detail.
okay,
So
great. and probably the exchange of crops and herds instead of when you purchase it, and how it would have to be calculated against the Jubilee year so that it was a fair exchange. You didn't own the land, only what you produced on the land. Was that discussed?
Yes.
So who owns the land?
God,
Very good. And we also, Gail, when we visited the Hopi Reservation, you probably heard similar stories about that.
Right.
And other Native American tribes felt that way. A lot of Aboriginal tribes say the same thing, whether they're in Africa or if they're in Australia. The Canadian tribes say the same thing, that they're just passing through. So what does that really mean? What does that really mean?
Well, it's an issue of stewardship and not ownership.
Very, very good. So good.
Wow.
That's a very important concept. And you can be a good steward or a bad steward. You could have a rich crop or a rich herd or not. But the calculations and what you paid for that were balanced so that the person working that land was going to give up what?
Well,
Only,
you
only a
don't,
portion of the value,
Lieutenant,
because it was the potential of what he grew or she grew on that land. And so it was a balance. It wasn't if you bought it in the last year that you only bought it, you were buying the potential crops for that year based on the potential, the known crop production of that land over the other 49 years. So in that way, it was a fair balance rather than the land itself. And that's it. Michael, you had your hand up.
Yeah, this whole process is about getting close to God, to be godlike, and to honor your fellow man, and uh, and to look out for the well-being of everybody.
That's true. It doesn't really balance the scales so that it's even. It's close to even one way or the other. It's never 50-50. And that's really because it depends on what the person was able to produce. And so that's how things were balanced.
And it's about being, as Steve said, being a good steward is to keep the whatever is growing, to keep it growing, so you don't leave it barren, so it doesn't, the year coming up uh, doesn't grow anything. So it's about the continuance of having things grow.
Very good. Very good. Did any other discussion? Yes, Rabbi Mary. If you can now move closer to your microphone. Your voice is very soft.
Yeah, can barely hear you, Mary.
You may have to turn up the volume for the microphone.
okay, keep going, please.
There you go. There you go.
better.
Much better.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, not quite.
No,
So, Grace, well, happy birthday, Axel. And Grace, did you want to say anything about Axel? And good stewardship.
Oh, and good stewardship. Well, so yes, today is Axel's second birthday. We're going to Colorado to hang out in this special place and honor his day. It's a walking trails and it's a fenced dog park with a water and just it's going to be a nice day. It's going to be beautiful weather. I'm glad to get to enjoy that. And I love that we kind of summed up this most recent reading with about stewardship, not ownership, right? That really struck a note with me. So I've been a good steward today, most of the day. I freshened up his water. I gave him his favorite cookie to go out in the yard. I mowed the lawns yesterday and the day before that. So, I'm stepping in, fetching, and I'm trying to take care of this yard, which is a lot of work, but I get to be outside and enjoy the fresh air. And I'm just very blessed to have that. I like the fact that, it doesn't belong to me, but it is my position and job to care for it the best I can.
Yeah.
Grace, what we're seeing behind you is that your yard, because that's a very big yard. If that's your yard.
Thank goodness that is not my yard. I'd need a big, John Deere tractor to mow that. No, I have about a quarter of an acre, but it's broken up into portions. So I have an area that's fenced with 11 trees, and so I get to wind in around the trees, and then I have another area that is not fenced in, and I share it with a neighbor on one side, and then the other side there's just an open area. And sometimes I'll go over and mow that because it gets a little too long, too tall. And I have this little bitty, gasoline powered motor that has 5 different levels so I can lower the blade and raise the blade. And more recently, it's been I do a high cut and then I'll shorten it and do a lower cut. It's fun. I enjoy doing that. It's just very challenging to keep up with it because it's amazing what God does to this earth. A little bit of water and it just blooms and grows and grows. Recently, the agricultural news was telling us that it's better to let your grass get longer before you cut it because it puts all the nutrients and everything back into the soil. So I'm not going to complain about having a little bit taller grass than everybody else.
There you go. There you go. You don't have to worry about an HOA where you live.
Exactly. Well, in Wyoming, we mow, and in the desert, we rearrange the rocks.
Yeah, one of the things that this discussion today goes in when you look at the crops, you're being given the crops by the soil.
Mm.
Think of it, if you think of it that way, that fits into some of the 10 Commandments. Think about it, and also how you treat other people. We haven't yet, this before we talk about slaves, what about other people and your family? Okay, think of it like you have to honor your mother and father. They gave you life. It's the same thing. You've planted seeds and you're raising crops, or you're helping deliver the lambs from the sheep, the ewes, and to be sure that their life progresses. You're going to shear them at the right time of year, so that so that they can weather hot weather. You have to be able to do all of that, and allow certain things to take time. You have to. It's part of stewardship. Also, is learning about time. That you can't always have everything when you want it. It's like I used to tell patients, well, it's like baking a cake. Okay, you have to put out all your ingredients. You have to mix them. You have to knead the dough. You have to, if you're making cookies, you're going to use a rolling pin. You're going to wind up putting it in one kind of a pan or another. Depending on what you're doing, you're setting the temperature in the oven at a certain level, and then you have to wait a certain amount of time for things to happen. This is no different than farming and than any agricultural process. And so when you see all of this, it means that we have to develop patience, and we're going to come across that in our readings as when we go into the book of Numbers. We're going to learn something about that. The other thing is that in addition to raising children, they don't just, it may seem, I know as we get older, it seems like these kids just pop out and grow up in a very short period of time. But it takes a good number of years. And each one of these kids mature at a different rate. If Helene were with us, she would love to talk about this. And each one has a unique personality. Oh, we see that in our pets too. And sometimes we treat our pets better than we do our children. Think about that. So, there are some people that do that. And just like if you treat the pets poorly, sometimes what you do with your kids comes back to bite you in the future. So you have to be careful with that. But what else did you discuss? Did you discuss anything about slavery? How you treat your fellow
Yes.
man if they're a slave? What was said about that?
That I think I had mentioned something about that with the discussion of slavery, and that I chose to would use the word worker over slave, because I'm not sure if there was a guideline to slaves. The one guideline that I do remember in this discussion was that the slave would be let go after 7 years. It's I think something to that effect. And or if I don't know about this, if they had given the option to the slave or the worker to remain as part of the family, or they could leave. So I think there was some guidelines which lead me personally to look at them as a worker rather than a slave, because the connotation of the word slave is pretty awful. To be a slave is just a terrible thing from my position of life. Because I will look, in more recent times with the black slaves we had in this country, which was horrific, just horrific. And I could understand the black community, what they have the way they look upon it now. If things are getting, thank God, much better in that area. We had a black president. I don't know why he chose, because he was white and black, but that's his choice. So whether for good or for worse, the one thing that came out of it that's good, he was a black president. That's the good of it.
Mm-hmm.
That did a lot. That did a lot for the country. That was a very, very good thing. Whether you agreed with his presidency or not, I'm not talking about that whatsoever. The good thing that came out, that the country voted for a black president.
Yes.
Black, Now it's the time for a Jew, which is not going to happen, unfortunately. And I hope I'm wrong. But like we talking before, just to say,
yes,
it's more important to have the right person than the color of the religion or the color. It's about having the right person, whether it's a man or a woman. That's
that's true.
that's what I'm saying.
Very good. Thank you. Anything else that was discussed? Yes, Steve.
Just to clarify, to discuss, and with all due respect to Michael and what you said, and we heard what you said, the slavery, actually, what's discussed here, this was a different time, this was a different age. It's distasteful to us. Okay, so I'm not speaking as a proponent or advocate of slavery. Okay, I'm just saying that what is in the text, what's being discussed, is probably actually slavery, because they do say this isn't a wage. It's not a person with, this is a person probably in a very dire financial situation who was forced to do this. And they're talking about selling. You are owned. You become property, at least temporarily, but you do become property, like an animal. You've sold yourself, and then you have to redeem yourself. Okay, and during that period of time when you were sold, you pretty much have to do everything. You can't say, I'm not going to take weekends off, or I'm going to get a lunch break, or you may not be in a negotiating position as a worker would be. You're still regarded as a slave. Very sadly, when the Civil War broke out, there were Jews on both sides of that slavery question, and there were rabbis who came out and said, look, this was discussed thoroughly in the Torah. This is okay, as long as it's got rules. Okay, they weren't all in the South either. There was one very prominent rabbi in the North who gave a sermon and was very anti-abolitionist. I'm just blanking on his name, but he gave his sermon in New York, actually, and said he wasn't exactly pro-slavery, but he was very anti-abolitionist, and said, there's no room for, abolishing slavery. So, this is, we have to acknowledge it's a very difficult question. Yeah. It's not something that, I'm not speaking, I want to be very clear, Michael, I'm not speaking as a proponent or an advocate of slavery. I'm just looking at the text and, saying what the text is talking about rather than what we would like it to be talking about. So,
yeah, I understand, Steve, what you're saying. And so I agree with you. I was just pointing out the fact that there were a few elements, a very, very few elements with a Jewish slave, very few, that didn't exist with other types of slavery. That's what I was just trying to point out.
Rules, yeah, there were different rules applied to them.
Okay. Ceylon, did you have your hand up?
Yes, first thing I learned in history classes was you cannot judge history by today's standards. And we had slavery over the whole earth at different times in every culture.
That's very true. That has been true. Now, I could easily go into a discussion about how slavery still exists in the world in different locations, but after I give the floor to Rabbi Mary, I just want to say that and somebody can answer this after Rabbi Mary, was there any discussion about differentiation of slaves? Okay, Rabbi Mary. If you speak close to the microphone, I think it may be better, because something happened. You were fine for a while. Your words are all chopped up.
Marty?
I'm sorry, Mary.
Would you be able to have Rabbi Miri call you on your house phone and put it on speakerphone so we can see her, hear her? You know what I'm saying?
Ask her to turn on.
Okay, let me give Rabbi Mary, I can give you a number and you can call and then you can try. Excellent suggestion, Steve.
Camera first,
Why do you have to turn off her camera?
because the camera takes a lot more bandwidth than sound.
And since I know everybody who's on here, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
Rabbi
Les
Mary?
says, Mary, you have to turn off your camera. So,
Try that
but
first.
first, he says, but, and then call up, Marty Cohen on his house phone and maybe we can.
Or my cell phone, whatever you have, Mary. Hey.
Yeah, can't understand what you're
I
saying.
don't, it's not coming through. Don't, just a minute. Well, while we try to get connected, was there any discussion about different types of slaves?
Oh, probably.
You had people who were Israelis and you had people who were not Israelis? Was there any discussion of that?
No, well, we could, Marty, if we could go to verse 47, we get into that a little bit, so maybe we could start.
Okay, we will. Let me see if I can find a phone number for Mary. And hopefully we'll be able to get this ironed out.
Yeah, Esther wants to ask you something, Anthony.
Esther, why don't you go ahead? You may.
You're muted.
Esther.
Muted.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm working around my office. As you can see, it's a little messy while I listen, so excuse me for not being on screen. But like people like Hagar and these concubines of what they sort of considered as not slaves, but slaves, you know what I mean? That they weren't really they were part of the household, but weren't quite free citizens,
Yeah, they were concubines.
concubines. So
Yeah.
is that considered a
It's a different category. It's an elevated slave, let's put it that way. It's about as close as one can get.
Well, if you look through some of the manifests, when I was surprised of people coming over, they were not slaves, but they were maids and stuff like that, and that was very surprising to me to see. I don't know if this relates, because I missed the very, very beginning of what we were discussing.
It is. We're going to be getting into it as we get this subject as we open today. We've been talking about the last session. So and so because I wasn't here, and that's why I wanted to know what was covered. So I think what we can do, if someone would care to read.
I did, Caroline, I did.
We are on Leviticus 25, verse 47. Yes, Beth.
I'll read, but I just
Okay,
wanted
thank you.
to say something. Esther, can you hear me? Oh, no, she's already on mute. Never mind. And if a stranger who is a settler with thee be waxen rich, and thy brother be waxen poor beside him, and sell himself unto the stranger who is a settler with thee, or to the offshoot of a stranger's family, after that he is sold, he may be redeemed. One of his brethren may redeem him, or his uncle, or his uncle's son may redeem him, or any of that is nigh of kin unto him of his family may redeem him. Or if he be waxen rich, he may redeem himself. Do you want me to go further?
Why don't you finish it through verse 55?
And he shall reckon with him that bought him from the year that he sold himself to him unto the year of Jubilee. And the price of his sale shall be according unto the number of years, according to the time of a hired servant shall he be with him. If there be yet many years, according unto them, he shall give back the price of his redemption out of the money that he was bought for. And if there remain but few years unto the year of Jubilee, then he shall reckon with him. According unto his years shall he give back the price of his redemption. As a servant hired year by year shall he be with him. He shall not rule with rigor over him in thy sight. And if he be not redeemed by any of these means, then he shall go out in the year of Jubilee, he and his children with him. For unto me the children of Israel are servants. They are my servants, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Right away, there's a question, we talk about the moon waxing and waning. And so this idea of waxing is that somebody is actually increasing or decreasing in their wealth. It's in 49 where it says, or if he be waxen rich, he may redeem himself. I'm curious as to how somebody could make money while they were indentured to someone as a servant.
Any any comments first?
What is that translation you're using, Beth? I really have problems following that one.
Oh, I'm using Hertz, the Sonsino. I think there's at least 3 of us that have that. Steve, don't you have that one?
I'm using Hertz.
Yeah, that's Hertz.
Yeah.
And David has the same one too.
Same one.
It's close enough that we can follow, but any comments about it? Bev, do you want to read the same passage from your book?
Starting where?
Verse 47.
Oh, verse 40, okay. And if a stranger who is a settler with thee be waxen rich, and thy brother be waxen poor beside him, and sell himself unto the stranger who is a settler with thee.
That's the same one.
It's the same one.
Yeah,
It's the same
it's
one.
same one.
You said the same one. That's what,
Okay, so that's 4 of us that have.
yeah.
But what aspect of the translation is problematic and that people are questioning?
I don't think it's problematic. I just have problems following it. It didn't sound like Old English to me.
It is. It is.
Are you asking what waxen rich means?
No. It's I just think
It's the position of the adjectives and the verbs and things like that. It's Old English style. That's
What's
all.
the clarification of the expression that's actually in the Hertz commentary?
I understand
where he says, if he attains power by or means, is what that waxen rich experience.
Oh, 2 years.
Well, we can all figure it out what it means. Yes, Grace.
I have to say that it's a bit challenging for me to understand the version that has just been read.
Sure.
If a resident alien among you has prospered, and your kinsman being in straits comes under his authority and gives himself over to the resident alien among you, or to an
Right.
offshoot of an alien's family. So it's talking about various stages of that person's life. 1 year he's doing better than the next year, he's not as great. And that person is it seems as though they're voluntarily offering themselves of service.
Mm-hmm.
They're not being held captive to repay a debt or to earn wages. So I'm having a hard time saying following what this has to do with slavery.
Well, it is a very, this is the other side of the coin. If, in simple terms that you can follow, suppose a Jewish person has to work as a slave for a Christian. Okay? These are the rules that are to be followed if that situation occurs. Okay? And it says here he is still considered part of the Jewish community. So one way or the other, he can be redeemed. And it lists all of the different ways in which the redemption can occur. So that yes, Marcia, I'm aware. Just so that you don't have to run into any difficulties, you would be paying the redemption based on the amount of work that that person does, or if he's been fortunate to work for a good slave owner and be paid more, then he would be more wealthy and he would be able to pay his debt of service faster. Think of it that way, and I think this paragraph makes more sense. Yes, Marcia.
I'm so happy that you read that version because I have the same version and I'm a women's commentary. I don't know if that's the book she has, but I was so glad that I wasn't the only one not reading the right things. So thank you.
It's the way it's written, but it is, as was pointed out, Old English. And it's not that cumbersome. You just have to say, don't, try to think of a different way of saying the same things. I thought I saw another hand somewhere. I have two Rabbi Marys.
Can you try it now?
Oh, it
I'm
works
working-
beautifully.
Beautiful.
Okay, so I'm doing this on the phone. I'm working with the phone, not with the computer.
You're doing a good job.
Sign out from one of her, you're signed in twice, so just sign out once.
Right, that's what I'll do.
It's not the phone.
So that's good.
Okay, what now?
Okay, we were talking, while you were doing this, we were talking about verses 47 through 54. And dealing with what happens if a Jewish, an Israelite is going to sell himself into slavery to a foreigner. And I put it in terms, I put it in terms slightly different. What happens if he's owned by, if a Jew today is owned by a Christian in a slavery state? Because people could relate to that situation easier, and how one way or the other in this whole paragraph it lists all the different ways that redemption could be paid to the owner so you could set yourself free. But it would be up to the slave to, it's under the conditions that the slave is setting forth, whether they want to stay with that slave owner or not.
Now, so you're bringing all this business into today? That you
Yes,
talk about?
as an example, it's not a reality, but I'm
But you're
just
talking
saying that
about-
if you think of it in that way, you can see the Jew and the foreigner. Okay? The Israelite and the foreigner.
I need to read about it, but if the Israelite, or if we want to continue being slaves, there is a consequence for that. If the owner wants to release you, he releases you, and then we talk about the family, what happens. But as far as being a slave to someone who's not one of us, I don't know. And does it appear here, or
Well,
you
we
are
had been talking
speculating?
about we had been talking about if a Israelite has an Israelite slave, but what
Yeah.
if it's somebody living in that community,
Yeah.
non-Israelite, who owns a
Okay.
Jewish
There,
slave?
you're talking.
Right,
Well, if the owner is one of us and the slave is one of us, we know what happens if he wants to stay, right?
right.
They put it on the door and make a
Yes.
hole in his ear. Okay. Now, what you're asking is if not one of us is a slave to one of us, what happens if he wants to stay?
This was in uh, how he can redeem himself to the foreigner.
This is actually, Mary, how the various options that I'm going to call him the indentured person has
Right,
to get out, and also the fact that whether or not the quote owner is Jewish or not, the non-Jew has to abide by the same rules. So this isn't talking about the ear
right,
and the staying. This is actually talking about, okay, you've indentured yourself for X number of years, and here are the rules of how the situation can change and what can happen during the time that you're indentured, because what they're specifically talking about is selling yourself as a slave to another person.
right.
Yeah, you become a slave, and if someone, your uncle is rich, he can redeem it.
Right.
Okay.
Or what was curious to me was that it says if the slave, the indentured person, it says in 49, or if he be waxen rich, he may redeem himself. And
Right.
as Steve pointed out in the commentary, waxen rich can mean powerful. Because I was curious as to how, if you're indentured to somebody, you could also be making money because somebody owns you.
Mhm.
Did you find it, Mary?
Yeah,
49?
I'm looking at in 40. And in 40, I follow the Hebrew. Like a laborer or a resident shall he be with you until the Jubilee. He's going to work with you, and then he's going to get out of you with his children. And what it says is Sahir and Toshav, which is a laborer or a resident, which is a different category. And it seems to me, according to this, that the same rules apply for everyone,
Yes,
regardless of your religion, or
yes,
regardless if you belong to the people or not.
Exactly, exactly. Because an addendum to the discussion is that there are certain rules that somebody from a foreign country would have to follow to remain in the Israelite community. They had to adhere to the law of the land, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, someone that start living among us, he is to do the rules, the regulations, and he gets also the benefits. I don't think that there is a difference of treatment between us and someone who's just passing by or is an alien or whatever translation you have about them.
Right. I think that's very good, Rabbi Mary. Any other ideas or comments about this? Okay. should we move on?
Please. Please.
Because what the rest of this is going to be just a short.
That's good.
If we move on, we go into some of the if you will, addendums to this passage. It starts a little bit, but first, before we get to all of this, there's a there's a little statement and then a lot about what happens if you don't follow the rules. Okay. There are, and this section can be divided into the blessings and curses. Rabbi Mary, or Steve, is it Tochecha?
Tochecha, yeah.
Tochecha is one subject, and is that terrible punishment?
No, tochecha is rebuke or curses, kind of.
So it's verbal.
Tochecha. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. There are Nevi'ei Tochecha which is prophets of rebuke. You know, they're
Okay.
You study the Bible at large, you know, there are prophecies that are, you know, encouraging and supportive, and some that are more you know, about what's being done wrong and what's going to happen as a result of that. So that's what Tochecha is not exactly threats, but rebuke, and it could be scolding. Yeah, yeah.
Scolding is a good word for that, yeah. No, no, no.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's a section that deals with retribution. What will happen? I don't know what the Hebrew word would be.
Can you please talk about the psukim, the verses that you're talking about?
Oh, okay. We haven't gotten there. I was just doing a general summary that we're going to be covering that.
Okay.
Retribution, and then hope will be it ends with the word of hope. So that I'm just without going into the lengthy discussions about each one, we'll begin with we are now on chapter Leviticus 26, verse 1. Okay. So if somebody would like to read.
You shall not make idols for yourselves or set up for yourselves carved images or pillars, or place figured stones in your land to worship upon. For I, the Lord, am your God. You shall keep my Sabbaths and venerate my sanctuary, mine, the Lord's.
Okay. Any comments about this?
I have what?
Now, remember where else these two sentences appear? Not to do idols and then the Shabbat.
Well, it's start the discussions of this starts in Exodus.
Where?
Oh.
All of you know it.
10 Commandments.
10 Commandments, right?
10 Commandments, yes.
Yeah, the first one is you should not have other gods. And the second one is about Shabbat. So this is interesting that it appears here after all the other stuff that was completely not connected with this.
Yeah, Hertz has a comment though that sort of connects it.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
The The traditional Hebrew division of the Bible text attaches the first two verses of this chapter to the preceding, okay? And because the association is a little puzzling. We were talking about slaves and specifically
Right.
like slave to someone who is not an Israelite. What's the connection with idol worship? And they're saying that the connection is if you're the servant of or the slave of the non-Jew, you might be tempted to adopt his religion, which is probably going to be idolatry, because those were the two options. And back then it was Judaism or it was idolatry. So
Yeah, that could be a good connection.
So
Yeah.
it sounds reasonable. I heard another voice from the temple. I don't know who. Yes, Gail.
Well, I was just gonna, when I'm looking at verse 3, we're gonna start a whole new type of discussion here soon. But it's interesting because we're getting near the end of Leviticus. And so they're gonna put it all together and they're gonna say, you do this because this will happen if you don't do that. So the priests have written this and they want to make darn sure you really understand what you've just covered. This is the conclusion almost that we'll be getting into very shortly. So.
I think that there are several comments here. I agree with everything that has been said. I think there are two other things that I just want to mention. And we just finished reading about the land and who it belongs to. Okay, we keep that in mind. When you read verse 1, here's another tie, Steve. You shall not make idols for yourselves or set up yourself carved images or pillars, or place figured stones in your land to worship upon. How many of you know about land markers?
About what?
Land markers.
Milestones.
That's right. It starts there. And these land markers, they remember if you owned your home, the plot had land markers on there. There was a stake in each corner. Okay. Back then, they used the idols, and it would also relate who it was. Because remember, the land was divided up by clans, and each one had their own totem. So this is not unique to one group of people. They did it worldwide. And so that people knew when they were trespassing or trying to move into someone else's land. Okay. But those idols were worshipped by the people themselves, and so they got to believe that the land was theirs. And if you go through Native American literature, Aboriginal literature, and such, you will understand what I just said. Yes, Michael.
Yeah,
And Rabbi Muni.
I remember reading, I can't remember how long ago, but a portion concerning this in a siddur some time ago. But I do remember that it referred to what I was reading, that idols have eyes but cannot see. Idols have throats, cannot talk, and so on and so forth. And so that kind of stuck with me. And I'm just saying that right now in regards to what we just read, 26:1.
Very nice interpretation, showing a difference. Very good. Very good.
Well,
Rabbi
guys,
Muni.
this is a very clear thing that appears in the Ten Commandments, and I always claim that we have to read the entire pasuk, the entire sentence.
Because it says, Orthodox people don't want to have statues. Actually, someone in your congregation one asked me, we have this beautiful statue, can we put it in the temple? And in my mind, my understanding is it's not having pictures and statues, but revere them as gods.
Right.
And the
Yes.
same with the stones, it just revere them. And it's not about having them or not having them. But if we read the entire sentence, you can see that that's what it says. It doesn't say don't build. It says you don't have to do it this and this to bow to them because I'm God. And by bowing, you convert them into goddess, little gods. And so what you're saying, Marty, perhaps, it started by a stone that you put to divide your land, and then you just blessing it and bringing fruits and vegetables because it's your God. So this here is just repeating the Ten Commandments in a
Yes.
very clear way.
Yes.
And we have to pay attention to that. Now, one of the reasons, and this is for Michael and for David, one of the reasons that when we enter the land of supposedly honey and milk, you should kill everyone. And the reason given there is because we might get contagious and start worshiping their gods. So maybe, Marty, what you're saying and what Steve is saying, the connection with the previous stuff is if we have all these foreigners among ourselves, we might start doing these things that are not allowed. Perhaps, but my emphasis, and this is Miri speaking, my emphasis is to bowing in front of what it's called even a matzeva. A matzeva is the heaven, it's the stone that you put on top of when dead people are, and you put the stone, that kind of, or for remembrance. So that's the issue, is about bowing to them, converting them into gods. So I think we have to remember, because many of our communities, not reform, not conservative, don't put pictures, don't do this, don't do that. But the idea is to convert them into a god. Today we convert money into a god,
Well,
And it's exactly right. And that raises another issue, because there are many, many things that we're exposed to that we can start to worship.
Exactly.
And that is going to detract from the rest of the understanding of the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
See, what Mary, you were saying really applies basically to a Orthodox temple, because you don't see pictures and any beautification. That the Orthodox temple is about keeping it clean and pure,
Yes.
and especially up on the beamer. So, and I would turn your attention now to a conservative temple, a shul rather, in Tucson, Anshe Israel. I'm sure you've been there at one time or another, and they have a beautiful window. I forget what you call them, with colored glass.
Yes, stained glass.
We tried. Yeah.
Stained glass is really back up there, and it's hard not to focus on that. It's huge and beautiful, but that's not the concept. The concept is the focus on prayer, and prayer, and the commander of the Ten Commandments, and that commander is God. So that's where it really stems from. The Orthodox, I believe, to my best knowledge.
It's really nice. The word that you use, Michael, I love it, is the issue of focus. Because if I'm in a service and I start focusing on, pieces of art or something, maybe it's a no-no. It doesn't,
It detracts.
it detracts, maybe.
That's right.
Maybe. But the words here is really very clear, not to bow in front of them and make them your gods.
And you see many things in the Orthodox, such as the curtain that separates men and women. The purpose of that is very clear. It's focus. Where are you focusing? What are you thinking about? And that you're not thinking about a man, and you're not thinking about a woman. You're thinking, and your attention is why you're there. What is the purpose of you being in that shul?
That's very good. That's a very
And by
good
the way,
of
Michael,
thinking of it.
that is contained in verse 2 of what we just read. So that's very, very profound what you said. Very important. I appreciate that.
I have my moments.
Yeah, you do.
Any other comments before we read on? What about if somebody would care to read verses 3 through the end of verse 5?
I will.
Thank you, David.
Okay, if ye walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them, then I will give your rains in their season, and the land shall yield her produce, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. And your threshing shall reach unto the vintage, and the vintage shall reach unto the sowing time. And ye shall eat your bread until ye have enough, and dwell in your land safely. And I will give peace.
Okay, that's it. That's all. Any comments about verses 3 through 5?
Yeah, Marty?
Yes, Steve. Okay, the pictures changed position, so I don't have a.
Yeah, just the very obvious sort of meaning of what's being said, and this is also a little bit problematic, is if you follow the statutes, someone might hear these psukim, these verses that we just read, and think there's a guarantee that things are gonna work out for you. It's that's actually Calvinist, isn't it?
Yes.
Or that sort of that if you follow the mitzvot, you are guaranteed that things are going to work out well for you. And people, in our lives, we know that actually, you can follow all the rules very carefully, and you can do everything properly, and you have not done anything wrong, and things don't turn out well for you. And that is always a bit of a problem. There have been excellent books written about that, but just reading it on the surface, that would seem to be what's being said.
Okay.
You are guaranteed, and we know that that's not the case. That things don't always work out perfectly for you when you are following the rules and you are God-fearing.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. I'm going to call on Suzanne first, only because she hasn't joined in yet. Yes, go ahead. And then Michael.
I think the difference is this is God making a promise with the biggest little word, certainly in English and probably in Hebrew, and it starts off with if.
Mhm.
And he's saying, if you do all these things, I am going to give you all these other things, and you're all set. Everything will be good. And I'm contrasting that with what Steve has said. We're, like Steve said, I mean, we can, be going along and seeming to do things right and stuff, but that is no guarantee. The difference is, this is God giving his word versus us just living life.
Okay. Before I call on Michael, I just want to say that are we, I'm going to use this word pure. Are we pure 100% of the time? Are we
No.
free from erring
No.
100% of the time?
No.
No. So that's the catch here. It's okay, we can make mistakes and we can go through a drought because we didn't follow the rule all the time. There's a catch here. That's another catch here. You are very correct with the word if, but we also know human beings make mistakes. We have to learn. And then we say, oh, I should have known better. Or I just learned something new. And in doing so, we acknowledge that, but we've made some sort of a mistake that doesn't mean that you're going to get what you wish for.
But Marty, there's just.
I'm trying to give him a way out.
No. But here's that catch you point out is actually very problematic because that's why the rabbis, some of the Orthodox rabbis will say, oh, you know why that tsunami took place? Because these were good people, but you know what? If you look carefully, they did screw up in this small area. And so they got punished by God because, you can't, I don't think God, as a matter of fact, it does say in the Torah, I can't quote, I can't draw the exact verse, but these things are not distant from you.
Right.
In other words, it doesn't say this is something, these laws are so complicated, you'll never be able to follow all of them, and you'll always end up screwing up. That's not what it says. It says these are attainable. So what you're saying, Marty, you're saying, well, you know why it didn't work out for you? Because you were almost perfect, but not quite perfect. And so God's punishing you because you weren't perfect. That God doesn't punish you for that. That's very problematic. There are some, schools of orthodoxy where they do say that this is where you screwed up. Do you know why the Holocaust happened? It's because of Reformed Jews. That's why the Holocaust took place, and because they messed up,
Well, that's why I was provocative, because you have two schools of thought. What I was mentioning is the Primo Levi side. I prefer the Viktor Frankl side. Okay? Those are two opposing philosophies that came out of the Jewish philosophies that came out of the Holocaust. Anyway, there are a lot of hands. Keep your hand up so I remember. I know. And correct me if I'm wrong. I know that Beth and Michael and Gail have had their hands up, but I don't remember the sequence.
I think Michael was first.
Michael, you're
Michael is
first.
up.
Michael, Beth,
Michael is
and
up.
then Gail.
I'm
Okay.
not going to get lost anymore in the shuffle.
No, okay.
And so,
Okay.
anyway, I want to talk. I want to respond directly to Steve with his earlier comments, if I can remember Thank you very much. The answer is unforeseen circumstances. When you do everything right, you don't miss anything, and you believe you just did everything absolutely correctly. There can be full unforeseen circumstances that you would never think of. They work opposite. Now, it's funny that you mentioned that because uh, uh, Marty and I had a discussion about that before the Torah class, and what I was saying is we as Jews have done everything right. What is the purpose of all of these Holocaust centers? Why are they there? Why do Holocaust survivors go to schools, colleges, and talk about what happened at the Holocaust? What is the purpose of all of that? And now we think we're doing the right thing. So how does it come to do? They hate us. They hate us in the colleges. They can propagandize that. They've turned away from 10-7. How does that all happen? Well, it's possible that what we do, the good things that we do is actually working in reverse. And so I had to bring that up. And Marty and I, it was so coincidental that you brought that up because
because there are different schools of thought here, and I understand where Steve is coming from, and I do take his side. I was just verbalizing this other side, and so I just want to clarify that because how I feel, but I wanted to provoke discussion here because this is a very vital point, and I'm glad Steve brought it up. Yes, Beth.
I think that when you're setting out rules of what you want humans to do, we don't respond well to strictures that end with maybe, or start with maybe. So maybe if you do the right thing, then good things will happen. Isn't going to get the same attention as if you do this. We like cause and effect, and I think part of it is that life can be really, really great, and it can be really, really awful.
Mm-hmm.
And the fairy tales that we grow up with, that come through all the cultures that end up with, okay, this is a good person, and so good person happens, except whoops, Job, and then happily ever after. If you work hard, then you will achieve certain things. I think by nature we need that to move forward more than, well, maybe if you do this, you can hope to have the good thing happen.
There's a good way of putting it. I like that. Yes, Gail.
I was just thinking, all religions have wrestled with this. There are people that wore hair shirts. If I wear a hair shirt and I punish myself, then I'll be saved, whatever the hell that means. And, it's not peculiar to us that we're looking, what have we done wrong to deserve that? Why me, God? Why me? Because that's life. And it's one thing to set rules, and I agree with Beth, what she just said, we need the rules, but there's something to try to achieve. This is not saying you're going to get there.
Right.
Say, look, if you do this, life will be a little easier, maybe, but maybe not. There's no surety. And I agree with Steve. It's a maybe situation,
yeah.
But you still need to have those goals that you're trying to achieve.
Very
Still,
good.
but
Very
that
good.
guarantee, this is not the way life works. It just isn't.
Good points. I'm going to ask, there have been a couple of people, well, I was going to ask Marcia if she had anything she wanted to say about this.
I'm just listening.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. And I think we chased David away. I'm only kidding. Ceylon, and Bev, did you have any ideas?
No, I actually, Steve, I thanked him for bringing that up because, you know, of
Yeah.
the guarantees and all of that.
And by the way, this has been, yeah,
We're not doing something wrong. And so, see, that's what happened to you.
Right.
right.
You know, because you're wrong and I'm right. And
This has been used against us as a people also.
yeah, that's.
Okay. And so we've thought about this. This debate has been, and there's no, as was mentioned, as Steve put it, there's no easy answer. There is no question. And I think that, but the one thing that's most important is maybe God is trying to say, I hope you follow these rules.
Marty,
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Gal.
one final thought. The word Israel means to wrestle, am I correct?
Yes,
That's what we're doing. We're wrestling. We don't
wrestle with God. Yes,
have the answers. We can
That's-
look to try to achieve some, but we're not going to get there, folks. It's probably not going to happen.
very
But
good.
wrestle is important.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And yes, Rabbi Mary.
Okay. We live in a time that science is in very much the center for people that are able to think. Okay, we have another type of people that don't think and don't know and don't learn. So these days we can say, you know, the ice in the Antarctica or in Iceland is melting because, you know, we have holes in the, what's it called?
The ozone.
Right, because we overdo what we are overdoing. So here we have an explanation.
Right.
That again, some people and some even presidents don't believe in it. So if we have that kind that we learn to associate behavior with consequence, we not always have that ready. We don't know why. I cannot think of an example. My big example is why people have wars. You know, I don't think that that's a scientific thing, but maybe someone will say, well, I found in the genes of certain people, and that's the consequence. Or someone that has this terrible disease, and you can explain, well, if you drink this filthy water, you're going to get malaria and whatever diseases that come. So this is a very important thing to remember, and it's in every religion, that when you cannot explain something, you go to, you know, as Gail says, you know, yeah, we don't know why. We don't know why people fight. I don't know. It's beyond me. But I can say, you know what? You didn't behave, you ate shrimps and you ate that and you didn't keep, and you had ice cream with meat and so forth. God punishing you because we need an explanation. This is why me? Why I got cancer? Why my son died? Why? We need to have responses. We are rational people and we want those responses. And when you don't have it, you have to look somewhere else. So I think that this is something that we have to remember when God says, in blah, 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 then blah, blah, blah. It makes sense to me. Makes sense to me that if you don't have an explanation, you look somewhere else.
Okay. And that's human nature. That is very much.
Yeah, we want to know.
And it's interesting. The questions that we can't answer make us go crazy. The questions we can answer, we just go on with our lives as if nothing happened.
Right.
And so, by the way, the advertising agencies and news agencies know this extremely well.
Right.
And take advantage of all of us on a daily basis. It doesn't matter what you believe, you will find some way in the news to justify what Steve was talking about. And that's why I say that sometimes it isn't important to ask the question why, but maybe, okay, what's wrong? Let's get together and do something to solve it.
Marty, I was just thinking one of the funniest things, well, not
Yes.
hilarious, it involves bad things happening to people. But every once in a while in the news, there'll be a hurricane or a tornado that will go through a town.
Right.
Been there.
Take out one church, the other one. And people are saying, well, God made a decision here. No, I've actually heard that seriously, and the people are saying, they took that church because they saved ours because God loved us. Really? I've actually heard that on the news many times.
It can happen, yes, I agree.
That's
Yes,
right.
Beth.
When I lived in Hawaii, the last year I was there were a lot of shark attacks, an unusual number. And a guy from Tonga showed up in my house one day. I was living, on the beach. On the water. The house was on the water, and he said his grandfather was visiting and could they go spearfishing? And I said, well, okay, but there've been a lot of shark attacks. And the guy said, yeah, I'm good with that. So the grandfather stayed on the beach with me while we waited for his grandson to come back. And he was gone for what seemed to me a long time. And I said, so what do sharks mean in Tonga? And of course, because the shark is a minor god in Hawaiian mythology. And he said, well, sometimes people get bitten by sharks, but not often. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And he said, well, somebody may not look like a bad person, and we may not know that this is a bad person, but the shark knows.
There you go.
Interesting.
But so if you take that and you take it into Judaism, and the idea of following these statutes, of striving to be a good person, because in my opinion, no matter how good you are, you still got some striving to do. That imperfection, that always trying to be a little bit better. And so maybe nobody knows besides God, what this person, the inner workings of a person's goodness or badness, evil, whatever you want to call it. Or maybe we just need to go find some sharks and wave at them and see what happens.
So did the sun make it back?
The
Oh.
son made it back, and he had, amazingly, because he had a stick that he had put the fish and the lobster on. So these poor things, a lot of them were still alive and squirming, and he held out the stick and said, "Take your pick." And I mean, it was hard to see, even though I eat fish, and I don't keep kosher. I never met a bottom feeder I didn't like. It was really hard to be looking at these dying animals, looking at me. I took the lobster.
Oh, I thought he did that and offered them to the shark
Oh, no.
to say, take your pick,
No. But the idea that
Yeah.
that he's traveling with blood in the water,
Yeah.
and I mean, there were women that got attacked because they made the mistake of going swimming while they had their periods. And there were shark attacks from that. So the idea that there was all this blood in the water with him, and he was out for like 2 hours, and yet he was untouched. And so I think one could look at that as a kind of miracle. How do you go through a situation that's really very dangerous? Why is it that one person walks down a dark alley and gets mugged, and another person walks down that same alley and doesn't get touched?
Yeah.
Bad timing.
No.
Yeah.
It's the way
Time.
to
So it's time and space. Where you are in time and space.
Time, space, and demeanor.
Yeah.
I think if you walk in fear in your life, then I think it's more likely that bad things are going to happen because you open yourself up to being fearful.
Mm-hmm. Good points. Interesting. Any other comment? By the way, we've had this discussion over the past several years. I forget when we started now, but we've had the same discussion multiple times. But this is one of those controversial passages, and that's why it's important to have these discussions, because what changes is the time and space in our lives when we read these things, these issues, and we discuss them in different ways. So anyway, any other questions or answers, comments? Yes, Grace.
Hi, I just wanted to thank everyone for their sharing and their input, because it really helped me understand more of what we're reading. And I did recognize that it seemed to be pointing at, the basic principles that we received in Exodus about the 10 statements. It's just kind of restating them with so much more clarity, and to hear you verbally feed that back was wonderful. Thank you. I was just over here with my groom table and the dog picking stickers. So it's that time of year where everything is in bloom, and those sticky things that fall to the ground, a poodle's coat seems to collect. So anyway, I was just had my ears on and was focusing on listening to you more so than grooming the dog. But I do have to leave a little bit early today, and thank you, everyone. I will see you when I see you.
Okay.
So, Shabbat Shalom. Good
Shabbat
Shabbos.
Shalom. Take care. Well, with the discussion oh yes, Suzanne.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it seems to me that God is speaking to the Israelites as a nation more so than each individual. So if an individual screws up, then I think the implication is that there's everyone else to help that person along, so that as a whole, they're in compliance with the statutes and commandments and such. And let's say there's 1,000 Israelites. Of course, I know there's more than that, but if 999 of them do everything right, and the one screws up, forgets it's Shabbat, or I don't know, does something. I don't see that God is going to punish everyone because of the one individual. I think what God would expect would be for those 999 to pick that one person up and get them back on track. And as long as they're doing that, and as a whole, they're, following the statutes and commandments, then I see God would honor his end of the bargain.
I think that's very good. It makes a lot of sense. It does. Esther.
But Susan says, brings up, because, the thing that the Mashiach is going to come when God gives him things, and one of it is everybody keeps the Shabbat. Well, this in direct contradiction to God, saying that he's going to look at the majority, or, he's going to overlook that one. So how can we reconcile that concept of, God looking at the whole rather than everything? I mean, or God looking at most.
I think the emphasis
Never going to
is
come.
what everything that Suzanne mentioned, we have discussed in one way or another over the past year. All the do's and don'ts for the responsibilities of the individual, the community, and everything. And Suzanne was reminding us of that fact that it's the responsibility. If someone does wrong, you have the right to rebuke them. There are ways that people should share in the community and look after. So I understand where Suzanne is coming from. But what you're saying, Esther, is equally important. That's all I can say. There's no easy answer to this.
Yeah,
Well,
that's right.
it's very depressing. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't believe that what happened to the Holocaust, or what happened October 7th, is because God is punishing us. I definitely don't. Maybe not Yahoo, but it's just
I know.
look at things.
Okay. Now I think I'm not sure if it's Bev or Gail. It's Gail. Before they throw the tissue box at me, yeah, I can't. Your images are smaller, and so when you have to do that sometimes to get my attention. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to remark on what Suzanne said. That one person out of 99 or 100 or whatever might be an issue. But if that one person is the leader of the country, leader of the committee, or the leader of the program, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Because then you're going to punish everybody for what that is in a place of authority. So I have to disagree with what she said there, because again, it depends on who that person is.
Okay. Good point. Good point too. Any other comments? Well, with this entire discussion in mind, let's read on. Yes, we have plenty of time. Why don't we read verse 6 through the end of 10?
excuse me, I'm sorry, I have to go because Pilgrim is wanting to go for a walk and he's getting.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
okay, wish him well.
Hope to join you again. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Esther. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, so who would like to read verses 6 through the end of 10?
Uh,
Go ahead, David. Go ahead, David.
Okay, and I will give peace in the land, and ye shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. And I will cause evil beasts to come out of the land, to cease out of the land, neither shall the sword go through your land. And ye shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall back before you by the sword. And five of you shall choose 10,000, and your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. And I will have respect unto you, and make you fruitful, and multiply you, and will establish my covenant with you. And you shall eat old store long kept, and you shall bring forth the old from before the new.
All right. Any comments? David, what you just read, did you want to make any comments?
Not particularly, except that it was, seems that he is kind of trying to summarize what has been discussed earlier, going all the way back, as Rabbi Neri said, back to the Ten Commandments and connecting it to that. That's all.
All right. Any other comments from any other comments that you may? Yes,
Yeah.
Steve.
No, just a quick comment about the language that prompted a
Yeah.
memory. Okay? There's sort of a description of, having the benefit of the very best. So they say, ye shall eat old store long kept, and you shall bring forth the old from before the new. And the expression in Hebrew for the old store is yashan noshan. Yashan noshan, which is literally, it means, not only old, but really old. And this was a term that was used on the really fancy Israeli wines. They would write that on the bottle, Yashan Noshan. So it's old store, and you better know this is really good stuff.
Oh,
So
interesting.
So they sort of, there's a lot of borrows, obviously it's Israel, in the Hebrew language. And, when they really want to be fancy, they borrow from the Bible. The certain transplant them to other things. So this was the fancy wine, was Yashan Noshan.
Good marketing.
Okay. Any other comments about what we read? Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, I was not going to say this, but I can't. It's too emotional for me. How, I'm going to use a very bad word. How all BS is this stuff, considering the land of Israel, that everything is counted from war to war to war to war. So that's all. I don't want to discuss this in depth, but for me, it touches my heart.
No, I can understand what you're saying. You see some verses 7. Well, see this paragraph, and it talks about and addresses what Rabbi Miri has just mentioned. What came to my mind was Abraham, and he enters into battle. What is it, the 3 against 5?
Yeah.
And so it's and here in modern times, we're confronted with a similar discussion. And again, it's another situation that it's not easy to answer.
Right.
And as you point out, there's a lot of emotion in multiple ways. But yeah, these are issues that still, can be discussed in multiple ways. Any other comments? Well, let's go on to verse 11 to the end of 17.
Oh, okay.
Who would like to read? Okay, go ahead, Beth. You have your hand up.
And I will set my tabernacle among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. And I will walk among you and will be your God, and ye shall be my people. I am the Lord your God who brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, that you should not be their bondmen. And I have broken the bars of your yoke and made you go upright. But if ye will not hearken unto me, and will not do all these commandments, and if ye shall reject my statutes, and if your soul abhor mine ordinances, so that ye will not do all my commandments, but break my covenant, I will also do this unto you. I will appoint terror over you, even consumption and fever, that shall make the eyes to fail and the soul to languish. And ye shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. You want me to stop there?
Okay, yeah, some of us have different language, a simpler language than that, but we get the gist. Any other comments about this part? This is if you don't follow the rules. By the way, this was part of the wording, as we had read before. This was very common wording in multiple contracts during the time period of from the to the BCE period and into the AD period, ADE period, and it is or ACE period. And the verbiage is similar to what was on those contracts at that time. So it's not anything unusual. You would find it in Hittite documents or Phoenician documents and things like that. Similar types of wordings. Yes, Beth.
Well, I think there's a real quandary here in terms of what we were talking about earlier about we're not very good with maybes if you want us to follow rules. So you can follow all the rules, but you still have to deal with the horrible side of human nature. So it's really challenging, I think, because if we are children of God, if we are aspects of God, then the unanswerable question is, to be blunt, why does shit happen? And I don't think I truly don't think that there is an answer to that, but I think the question is always there that you try to do, you try to do what's right and good, and then October 7th happens.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. Yes, Gail.
No, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, I'll get back with it.
Screen down.
What was it about the soul of God?
No,
What you were asking
no,
about?
but that is a good question. Well, one of the things I was thinking about refers to in verse 11, it says, and my soul will not scorn you. I wasn't aware that God had a soul. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. So it's one thing to say, okay, here's the rule, you have to do something a particular way. But maybe I follow the rule, but I don't follow the spirit of the rule. You know? It's one thing to say, okay, I'll go along exactly and do exactly what you said. I'll do A, B, and C, but my heart's really not in it. I'm wondering if that can be an issue.
No, that's a possibility. Any comments? Do you want to elaborate on that, Gail?
No, I don't know how you would elaborate. I do wonder about God having a soul. I think that's really a question.
Steve, and Rabbi Mary, what is the word used for soul here?
Nefesh.
No, okay. Okay.
Nefesh.
Okay. General, I'm going to try to answer your question, but you'll have to bear with me.
Okay.
Just bear with me, okay. So I want to go into the language itself, okay? Is it verse 11 where the soul is mentioned?
No, 12.
It's 12, okay. V'natati mishkani b'tochem v'lotin al nafshi. Well, do you know what? It's in general. In general, God is referred to very often in anthropomorphic terms, just because it makes it, God, we acknowledge that God is a very abstract concept, but continuously he's described as angry, and they actually very viscerally describe. So I think this is actually it's not implying that God has a soul exactly, but it's just describing him in anthropomorphic terms, so it's a little bit easier to visualize what's being discussed. That's all.
But
Now,
why not just say, I will not abhor you? Why? I mean, I think there's something very specific going on here, that it switches from, I will set my tabernacle among you. I will walk, I will be your God. But then there's this nafshi. And
well, my
yeah.
explanation for that is that's probably was at the time an expression that was used. That a person who despised another person wouldn't say I despise him, would say my soul despises him. Maybe. Okay, I would have to investigate that further for you, but I'm guessing that it was some kind of expression.
Did we have it in the etymology? I'll get to you, Michael, in a second. But this crossed my mind because what is the word that we use for breath?
Breath?
Nashem, neshama, neshima. And we say for soul, we can use ruach, nefesh, and neshama, with the three words, and all of them are connected with the breath, with air.
So now if we change soul to breath, okay, breath is an action. Okay, God wills events, he wills life to exist, but through breath. And now, so if we look at that statement, that it's not my soul, but my breath will spurn you, then you start wondering about the actions that come forth will not be what you expect. So because
Well,
breathing is an action, it's an action verb here. It's an action noun, I should say.
Is the in English it says, my soul shall not
And
abhor
same
you.
here, same
So
here.
what is, I'm also curious as to what the Hebrew word is that it's being translated as abhor.
You just said.
Nafshi, it's nefesh.
No, not nafshi is soul. Abhor is what I'm asking about.
Higal actually is puke.
Really?
Or yeah, or something is being revolting. It's from Goal Nefesh.
I want to do this and then.
Okay. All right. So it has to be that it's like it vomits you out. Is that what it is?
No, let me say, I'm reading these days the book.
I'm not going to do it one way or another.
Michael, we'll get to you. We're not forgetting you. We're just trying to discuss this one word, and then we're going to come to you.
Okay, I'm reading now the book that Gail gave me, which is fascinating. And the writer Hoffman, who was in the temple and talked about translations. One of the things that he emphasized, and I emphasized too, not to be Hoffman, is the issue of parallelism.
Right.
In which half of the verse says something and then the next one says the same with different words. So here, if we look at 12, let me see in English. This is 12. I will walk among you. Here he even puts a comma. I will be God unto you, and you'll be the people. And that's probably 11. Okay. I will place Mishkani betochechem. I'm going to put the place in which I dwell inside you, not in singular, in plural, among yourself. And and I'm not going to remove my being from you, in plural.
Very, very different than my soul shall not abhor you.
Right. Now, the word nefesh is also used in the Bible and in modern Hebrew as person. Okay, it's called the nefesh. How many nefashot came out of Egypt and then they multiply, etc. The word nefesh is used as person. So when it says mishkani, it talks about himself or herself, whatever you call God. I'm going to place myself among yourself, and I'm not going to reject my person, myself, from you. So here you have the word betochechem and etchem. You have mishkani, the place that I dwell, with nafshi, the person that I am. So these are two half sentences that tell the same thing.
And saying, I'm here to stay.
Exactly. As to stay with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Very, very well done. Yes, Michael, and you're going to have the floor now.
Thank you. Give me a moment. Bear with me. so I can try to remember what, I had two questions. This is the best I can remember what my questions were. What is the purpose of a soul? What is, two questions? I'll ask them. What is the purpose of a soul? And the second question is, does God need a soul? Does
Okay. I'll open it up to the group. What is the purpose of a soul?
Well, again, in that translation of soul for nefesh is very interesting, in which this guy said it's not soul. It's not soul as we see soul. But let's say that it doesn't matter what the translation is. And let's look at is soul. So what is for you, Michael, soul?
I really don't know. However, I actually believe a person has a soul only because I was taught that very early on in my life in Orthodox Judaism. So I do believe it. As you asked me, what is my concept of God? Really don't know. All I know is God comforts me, and I believe in it. And I believe in God.
Okay.
That's the best thing. Now, the purpose of my second question is, does God have a soul? And then I would answer for myself, does God need a soul? Because God is the supreme leader. He is he needs what he has. He knows what he has. And so if he wants a soul, he can. I don't think he needs one, because he implants that in all of us if we have a soul. He's the one who implants that in us. I would say, and that's what I believe. And I can't go through that.
If you remember in Genesis, when the human is created, and is created from dust, okay? He made you out of dust or ceramic or whatever. And what does God do next to you, to that ceramic statue? What does he do?
He breathes life into us.
He breathes.
Right.
He
It
resuscitates.
breathes, right. It breathes into it, because without that breath, you don't exist. You're just a statue.
Well,
So if we have a soul inside us, is it like having a liver and a pancreas and a heart? Is it something like that?
well,
Or it's something different?
well, I could tell you this. When I was born, so I understand, I was told the doctor slapped me when I was born, and I heard that the nurse got a few in too because I was so ugly. Nobody in the temple has a sense of humor. It's pretty terrible, people can't have a sense of humor and laugh a little bit. But I thought that kind of fit right in. That you kind of opened up the window for that for me. So, say la vie, whatever.
Okay, Suzanne has had her hand up for a long time.
I just want to say that I think the soul is the immortal part of our being. That's the part that lives forever. And I do believe God has a soul because we're made in his image. So if we have a soul, that has to relate to him having a soul. In my opinion, I mean, who knows? But that's what I think.
Yes, very good. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, just going back to what Rabbi Meiri said, okay, about the soul, because it's a very good discussion might actually be a deviation from what was originally intended in the text, because the language that back then, soul could mean something very, a sort of a higher function, but it can also mean just a person, just your personage. In other words, and let me clarify that a little further. We sort of superimpose our own knowledge, our scientific knowledge, on back then. Back then, there was very rudimentary understanding of physiology and how physiology works. They didn't really differentiate, well, this is the function of the liver, this is the function of the heart, and then maybe there's something sort of spiritual in addition to that. No, it was all mixed up. It was all felt to be connected. It was felt that somehow, this, whatever it was, this undefined force would circulate through the body and make everything work. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So what we're differentiating here in our modern understanding, that wasn't their understanding then. We're sort of superimposing our knowledge on them. Okay, it's really very, very simple. So we got this whole discussion started because what is the soul, and does God have a soul, and what are they talking about? They're just talking about something in very basic anthropomorphic terms.
Oh, okay.
That's all. Very, very straightforward. God is just saying, I'd be disgusted. But is he really physically disgusted? No, because that's just anthropomorphic terms. Same as, does God really become angry and incensed? And does his face turn red? No. He doesn't have human emotions. He's not human. But when discussing God in the Bible, he is often portrayed in these anthropomorphic terms.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
it.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Michael.
Yeah, this brings me back to cremation. For a long time, I know that Jews are now getting involved in cremation, and so what happens to the soul when the body is burned up? If you have a soul that gets burned too, that's very puzzling to me. That cremation is being allowed now, even in Israel.
Okay. Beth has her hand up with please.
Yeah. I have a hard time thinking of the soul as being anything physical. And I think of it as consciousness, self-consciousness, consciousness of, God consciousness, that kind of thing. That would not necessarily be coming from the physical world like the brain or whatever, but just a general consciousness.
Yeah, I think it has been said that the soul resides in us while we're living and leaves us when we die.
Mm-hmm.
There are other variations on that theme during your lifespan, but I mean, we discussed that little prayer we say at night that we learned as a child. Now I lay me down to sleep.
Oh, the Lord, my soul to keep.
Very good. So it's the same, concept. But anyway, Marcia, I think you had your hand up before I said anything.
Yes. Well, I would say the same thing. I think that this soul is what holds me together. And when they have a new child, they say, oh, they have the soul of grandpa. He's just like him. So is this something that put us together? And do we lose it when we're dead? And it goes over to somebody else? Or is it always there holding us together? And we just give a piece of it, like we teach the children to say a prayer like that, and then they have it. So it's the big thing that holds me together.
Yeah.
It's how I think, how I feel. And it's not a learning thing. It's just a part of me. That's my soul.
Very interesting. Very good description. Very good. Any other discussion? I know. Yes, Michael, go ahead.
Again, I would refer to the Orthodox. The days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we attend services at a cemetery where the Orthodox believe that the soul rises at that particular time of the year, and you say prayers at the graveside of your loved ones because of that.
Okay. I didn't know that, but yes, it is a in between the two holidays. Yes.
Before I go, I just want to say to you, Marty, that you did very, based on your condition, your health right now, you did great. I thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't do very much. The group really did it.
Well, you being here,
I provoked discussion. That's all I did.
You didn't fall asleep on us that you thought you might.
I used Buzz, okay, to keep me awake. The TENS unit.
Very
So
good.
that's fun. I want to thank everyone, and as we get along, but next week we will. This discussion we can have if you want again, because it comes up over and over again, because this is the contractual phase, and there's several different lines we'll be going over. But it's important to know that I have a hunch that these are, and even in Plout, he lists them as addenda to the parshas. So somebody must have written it at some point and added it in. Again, God inspired writing, but we're going to be able to have these discussions. Why is all of this added in? It's really a repetition of what has already been said. If you think about what we've read over the past years, the past year or two, all of these things. If you do this, I will. You'll get my blessing. If you do not, I will wreak havoc upon you, if you will. But all I'm saying is that we've gotten this discussion, and if we want to go back into it, because this will come up again and again as we go through all the do's and don'ts and things like that. Anyway, any announcements?
Yes, do come to the temple Tuesday at 2:00. Doris Evans is going to be presenting Life in the Desert. It's an excellent program. If you were here a few months ago, she did one on the Roadrunner family, and we had a great reception. So we invited her back for a second go.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there because I have physical therapy at that time. So I can't be in two places, but Sue is going to be there. I know that. Anyway, and I highly recommend, this lady knows an awful lot. Yes, Beth.
No, I wasn't doing anything.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, Beverly.
Yes. Yes, I just wanted to mention that on Sunday, the Art Gallery is having a reception for the new show. There will not be a gallery talk because it's a collection, personal collection of Jewish and Israeli art. And it's my collection. And everybody's welcome, and we're going to look at the art and eat and drink and whatever and pop.
Good.
2:30 is what time it starts.
Very, very good. That should be interesting. Yeah, yeah. And speaking of art shows, uh, Dr. Weiner.
Okay. Well, Bev doesn't know that she's still going to talk a little bit about what she sees in her pictures, that they were part of her life. And so we will have some art talk beside eating and conversing and being together. So please come. If you can, please come.
Okay. Any other announcements?
I'd just like to say thank you yet for the umpteenth time to Les for keeping us all together.
Yes, he's off to the side. He's on the right side of the screen, left side for the rest of us. Anyway, Shabbat Shalom, and
Shalom.
and hope to see you next week.
Be well, Marty.